Hello, dear gentle marketers. Welcome to episode 49 of the Gentle Business Revolution podcast, the show where we talk about marketing your business by disrupting the current marketing paradigm and changing it to a gentler approach, one that's based on empathy and kindness. As always, I'm Sarah Croce. I'm your host, and you know that you're in the right place if you are a heart-centered entrepreneur or change maker who is looking for a better way to market your business. Or you are what I call a marketing impact pioneer, so that's someone who's working for an organization who does business for good. Today's episode falls under the P of partnership of the Gentle Marketing Mandala. If you're new here and don't know what the marketing mandala is, first of all, a big warm welcome. So excited that you're here. I structured this podcast and the conversations around the 7 Ps of the Gentle Marketing Mandala. And partnership is one of those Ps. So seeing my one-page Gentle Marketing plan with the 7 email prompts might help you better understand what we're talking about here. You can get your one-page plan at sarahsanacroce.com/one page. That's the number 1 and then page altogether. So today we're talking about partnership. But real quick for my usual listeners, I want to just give you a quick personal update. I just got back from a month-long trip in Italy. So instead of flying, because given the current circumstances, the flights were still very uncertain, we decided to drive down and make it really into an adventure, because it takes actually 20 hours to drive down from Switzerland, where I am, all the way down to Sicily, which is the island just outside of the very south tip of Italy. So we drove all the way down, made some stops, the first one in Cinque Terre, which was absolutely amazing, because usually it's just full with tourists, especially Asians and Americans. So this time, since there were still traveling restrictions, it was just like people told us that it was kind of like Cinque Terre 40 years ago. So it was really unique and special to see it that way. Same thing with Capri. We also went to the island of Capri, which same thing, usually is just overloaded with tourists. And now it was just very comfortable. Still quite a bit of tourists, I have to admit, probably mainly locals. I cannot imagine going there when, it's like everybody is traveling, because it's such a small island, and already it felt like there was quite a bit of people. So those were the 2 stops down, and then we stayed at our place in Sicily and just enjoyed the Italian and Sicilian lifestyle, and then drove back up. And on the way back up, we stopped in Florence, which was lovely as well, because same story. It was just empty. Like the Piazza del Duomo was like so empty, you cannot imagine. And very, very, very good time to see those places. So I'm telling you all of this because in my recent newsletter, I just wrote about seed moments. So kind of getting out of our usual surroundings, and, if we can't travel, that may mean something else, like just going for a long hike with a friend, or even alone, or doing a yoga retreat, if that's an option where you are, if those are running, or just something that takes us out of our usual surroundings. And what I would add in there is something that has to do with beauty. So in my case, there was so much beauty in terms of architecture and landscape and just natural beauty, so much. And I'm kind of, all my senses are full now with all these beautiful moments. And those things can also happen in just a hike, in your usual surroundings. Maybe you have a place where you can go to easily, where you can fill up that kind of curiosity and those beautiful moments. I think it really helps us then go back into our marketing and look at it from this different approach. Like, how can I provide more beauty in my marketing rather than just facts and, information? So that's why I wanted to give you this personal update. I'm really now ready also to go back into business and have quite a few projects lined up. Besides the book, there's some other things I'm working on. So excited about that. So back to today's episode. In this episode, we talk about, as I said, partnerships and the different types of partnerships. So business partners, affiliate partners, joint venture partners, even life partners, because as I found out during the episode, I'll tell you about that later. So different partners, different personalities between partners, partnerships and introverts. So what does it mean to be in partnership with an introvert, or what does it mean for us introverts, to look out for partners? What to look out for in partners, so what kind of values need to be aligned, etc. Transparency in partnership, and so much more. I invited my friend and past coach, Michelle Schaefer, to the show, and she actually asked me if it was okay to bring her along, her business partner. And as I kind of already hinted at, I then found out during the show that Mars is also her life partner. So that's great. Together, they are the co-founders of Planet Business. And as the founder of LaunchMen, consultant to the gurus and developer of the successful live MicroLaunch process, Mars is known as a celebrated pioneer in the online marketing industry. And Michelle's the founder of the Empath Entrepreneur Academy, an award-winning blogger and podcast host. As I mentioned, she was my coach for a while in 2019. And she has also been a past podcast guest on my previous show. And if you're curious, you can look that up at sarahsanacroce.com/episode 59. Together, they're connected with hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs, guiding them towards creating profitable businesses they're passionate about while making a positive difference in the world. So let's hear what they have to say about partnerships. Hello. Hi, Mars and Michelle. I'm so glad to have you here on the show. This is my first time with two guests. So,
oh, awesome.
Great to have you.
We're special.
Yes, you're special.
We're excited to be here, Sarah.
Absolutely.
So good to have you. And Michelle, you were my guest on the previous edition of this show as one of my fellow introverts, right?
Absolutely.
And to me, I don't know you well, Mars, but I just listened to another episode of yours where you are together, and I'm like, he's definitely an extrovert.
Oh, I wish that were true. I'm an introvert who learned to feign extroversion is the truth of it. But I appreciate you saying that, because I've worked really hard on getting over my shyness. I was the kid that hid under the table when I was for years, and was the last one to speak and so forth. I just decided enough of this.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Cool. Well, as you know, we're going to be talking about partnerships in this episode. So partnerships is one of the P's of my gentle marketing mandala. And I thought of Michelle quite early on. And I was thinking about guests for this episode around partnerships, because I've been watching you even work together for a while, Michelle. And I just think, you definitely figured that out early on, that partnerships is an important factor in business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I reached out to you, you even said, and I'd love to talk about this, and I'll bring my own partner. So tell me more about that.
Absolutely. So when you ask, I suggested that Mars and I come on the show together because we do have a business partnership with Planet Business, and it's something that I've, as you've seen, has been a huge help to me in growing my business over the years. I've partnered with people in lots of different ways for different aspects of business pieces, and I think one of the things about our partnership specifically is we both bring different strengths and skills to the table, and that's helpful because instead of constantly trying to work on the pieces that we don't have or the things that aren't skills, if we partner with someone who has them, everything is easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear from you, Mars, as well. What do you think about?
So that was actually my thinking behind the whole thing was I got a really good friend of mine is one of the biggest, like marketers in the world, a guy by the name of Rich Sheffrin. And Rich has this theory, like that we all have our flaws, and that a lot of times the mandate and the advice is, work on your flaws and make sure that you fix those things. In order to have a business, you can't be this way, you can't be this way, you have to be this way, you have to be this way. And Rich has made more money than God, I think, honestly. And he's introverted too, and he just really goes to the point of like, I'm going to do the stuff that I'm good at, because if I would spend all of my energy working on the things that I'm not good at because I have so many flaws, he says this, and I realize I have so many flaws too, that the better thing to do is to work on whatever your strengths are and find somebody, whether it's internally, like Michelle and I are business partners inside of Planet Business. And then externally, when I go look for partners, I look for people who are able to do things. I'm talking promotional partners in this instance, who can do things that I can't do. Maybe they have different kind of reach than I have. They have different kind of audience than I have that I wouldn't be able to get access to. So focusing on your strengths and leveraging partners as basically support to kind of cover for where you're not strong is a huge key, and why Michelle and I actually started Planet Business together to do that.
Right. Yeah. When I think back, I think that sometimes as an introvert, we tend to think that we can do it all alone, because asking for help is really difficult.
Yeah.
Can you relate to that, Michelle?
Well, I certainly can. I'm the type that I'll just lock myself in a room and not consider that social interaction might be necessary or beneficial. Like, the lockdown really hasn't changed my life all that much.
Yeah.
So I totally get that part of it. And I think there's something to recognizing that it's not that we can't do it all alone, because we can. It's bigger picture. What is it that we want to do? And if we want to accomplish bigger things and reach more people, then it's a choice to make, to say, even though I can do this alone on a small scale, there's pieces I'm really good at. I want to do something bigger. I want to have more impact. I want to grow my income faster. Those kind of goals. Then I need to look at, okay, who can I partner with that really can help me make that happen? Because, there's a certain level you get to in business where, unless you're willing to do some sort of collaboration, some sort of partnership with people outside of yourself, it's hard to grow beyond that place.
Yeah, and let me actually add to that, because I think as a lot of introverts that are listening right now, the point you made at the beginning about sort of if you sum me up, looking at me from the outside, you might definitely assume that I am an extrovert. But Michelle can really tell you, in a lot of ways, I'm more of a sort of antisocial, and like it's just I've had to kind of learn it, and I just made the decision young enough that I was just like, okay, enough of this. I can't do this. It was actually, I watched the thing on primates, like a thing on gorillas, and because I used to be antisocial and be like, I'm not going to talk to any other humans. They're all hurt me, and they all things that you think when you're younger and you're not very popular in school. Right. And then I watched I think it was Jane Goodall, something with Jane Goodall, but she explained that if that humans are primates, and that primates, one of the things about them is that they're social, and if they don't have others of their kind around, they actually die. It only takes them 4 or 5 years on average they will physically die. So when I realized, okay, humans are social, primates are social, humans are primates, therefore let me learn the art of this. It helped me. It really did help me like get over that, or at least like face it. Face it would be a better way to say it. But at the end of the day, what I realized is, even though I'm naturally introverted, I enjoy collaboration because even though I'm introverted, I'm empathic, and so I really get fulfilled from having circular emotional exchanges with other human beings. I really enjoy the creative process and so forth. So I kind of had to like not let myself like live in that particular truth, So that's sort of where I come from on it, which is just do I actually enjoy collaboration with other people, and I mean circular emotional exchanges as an empathic person, So then that was sort of like my catalyst and my motivation for dealing with my natural introversion,
Yeah, and I love how you just completed each other, because it's true. It's like one thing is, yeah, we want to grow and we want to expand, but the other thing is what you just said. It's also, we want to connect. We want to have fun. We want to make it easy and enjoyable. And so for that, sometimes when we're just by ourselves, even though as introverts we're fine with that, it does make it more fun to do it with other people.
Well, and I think one thing about that is sometimes, especially as introverts, and especially when we're a little bit afraid of reaching out and making those connections, we forget we get to choose who we partner with. So we're not forced to partner with the humans who maybe market in a way we don't like, or push their business from a way that we wouldn't be able to sleep at night. We get to choose the good humans, the people who don't suck. We get to choose them to partner with.
That's a beautiful way of phrasing it.
Well, yeah. No, but it really is. It is a choice. And so you can pick the people that do give you positive feedback, positive feelings, and that you have a connection with to be in partnership with.
Yeah. Could you, because now we're kind of talking about different partnerships. So there's the business partnership like you have, and offline, I discovered that it's more than a business partnership because you're actually living together. So that's, the end all of partnerships. And then we have the more kind of promotional partnerships, or, just like JVs and affiliate partnerships and all of those things. So could you share some of the collaborations that you've experienced and that worked well?
I'll take this one, babe, if it's all right.
Go ahead.
All right. So we were on yesterday with a friend of ours, a guy by the name of Matt McWilliams. And Matt is he's in the top 10 sort of affiliate managers in the world. And I actually think he's one of the better teachers of it. There's some that are natural schmoozers and at sort of getting JV partners together and like motivating them, et cetera, because they have a natural gift for gab or they're great follow-up artists, et cetera. Whereas Matt's actually pretty good at teaching it. He actually can explain the mechanics. So while we were on the Planet Business podcast yesterday, we were on them, he went through, and I'll let Michelle actually dive in on a couple of the points that he made because she actually picked up some things I didn't. But the fact of the matter is, he went through like how you kind of have to think about, promotional partners, and laid it out end to end for us. And that was actually a few eye openers in there for me, even though like me and my team have done, I think we've done some of the, still to this day, some of the probably top 5 or 6 affiliate campaigns. I mean, into the 7 and 8 figure in a day mark, because I understand how to work with people who know how to gather joint venture partners together. And so what I learned from Matt yesterday was a couple things. My main takeaway, which I call the solid gold nugget, was his way of just being very consistent and following up with people, and how he sorts, sifts, and separates for JV partners and doesn't close his mind off to who could be partners with him, because he has a total process for it. And I don't want to go into all that, but at the end of the day, it really does come down to being methodical with it, and also with understanding when you're talking to somebody about potentially promoting whatever your business is. If you want it to be really, really successful, and I realized he literally went from sleeping in at his mom's house to like a $12 million plus business in a matter of a few months by leveraging joint venture partners. And at the end of the day, his methodology for communicating to people what's different about the thing that you're offering, it's just straight genius. Michelle, I'll let you kind of talk about what he said in terms of like pointing out the benefit to people, because my way of saying it's a little bit more brass tacks, down to earth. Yours is much more human.
Well, yeah, I think when you're looking at growing your business and really reaching a bigger audience, bringing in JV or affiliate partners is the fastest way to do that. And it's the smartest way to do it, because, you've got limited time, limited energy, and limited reach. All of us do. And so if we can find people who've already gathered together our ideal audience and our ideal community and just get them to share us, we get there much faster, right? And he talked about looking for, who in your space is promoting something similar to what you offer. Can you approach those people, have a conversation with them, find out if what you have maybe is a good fit for them to promote, or finding people who have something similar where you'd make a great next step or a great first step, but actually being willing to just reach out and say, hey, I've got this thing. I think your audience would be interested in it. is it cool if I send you some details about it? And just getting people to say, okay, tell me more. And, you started to talk about it, Mars. He has a system where he will follow up 10 times with somebody.
Yeah, every 10 days is the other. A lot of people do it every 7 days when they do follow up, and then you end up landing on the same day of the week, which means they might miss you the same way they missed you the first time. So his rotation is every 10 days, so that it ends up on different days of the week, and then 10 times. So every 10 days, 10 times for every 10 days, and it's just keeping it simple until they respond, and just methodically doing it in a way that's not invasive, that's not, abrasive, that's not annoying, but that's like, here's what I got, and here's what I think you might be interested in, keeping it real simple until they ask, until they're interested, until they're emotionally interested in what you have.
Yeah. And I think the key to it is you've got to find the value in what it is you're offering. You have to know, why is this something that somebody else would be interested in promoting? So what is it that their community gets out of it? And what is it that your promotional partners get out of it? And then you have the confidence to go talk to them about it, because you're bringing them something that's a win for everybody involved. And then even as an introvert, and I know this is so hard for us, we have to be brave and willing to not just shoot one email out there, but actually follow up with people.
Yeah, because this is coming from one of the top guys in the world at doing this, one of the top people in the world at doing this, because I have a couple of friends.
What I have a problem with is the 7, follow-ups and like pushing it. Like, if I'm not a good fit for this person, then even 7 emails is not going to make me a good fit. So I have a slight problem with that.
No, I totally get that. And you know what helped me with that was 2 things. One is really qualifying who I reach out to, meaning I put together a list of how do I know someone is a good fit? And I'll usually have 5 to 10 things on a list that tell me I know this person would be a good fit to collaborate with, so that I don't feel like I'm going in blind, and I don't feel like they're going to go, oh, this doesn't make sense at all. Why is this person bothering me? Right. So I start with that and I qualify people. And then on the flip side, what really helped me to look at it differently was, and this has happened a couple of times. The most recent time was about a year ago. Somebody reached out to me about being on their podcast and promoting something that they were offering, their service. And I got the first email and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I should totally do this. My audience would love this. And then I got distracted and I didn't respond to it right then. And I totally forgot about it. And they followed up. It was probably about a week later. They sent me another email. Hey, we just wanted to see if you got this email. And I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to do that. And then I got distracted again. It was not until the 4th email from them that I actually went, oh man, I got to sit down and respond to this. Yeah. And it's not because I wasn't excited about it. The first email I got, I was actually like, oh, this is really cool. I was just so busy and I was checking email in between client calls and other things, and I just didn't have time to give it the response it deserved, because I didn't want to write back with a like, oh yeah, that's cool. I wanted to actually respond, and I knew it would take me more than 5 or 10 minutes to respond, to give them some ideas of how I thought we could collaborate. And when I realized that even though I was super excited about it and it was a great fit, I was kind of ignoring the emails until that 4th email. I went, oh, I got to remember this when I'm following up with people, that if they don't respond, I can't assume it's because they didn't want to participate. I've got to really look at it and go, they're probably just as busy as I am. They're probably just trying to juggle a million things. And that 4th email that they sent me, it was funny because they actually gave me permission and made me feel okay about the fact that I hadn't responded yet, because it actually started with, hey, we know you were probably totally swamped right now, and we don't want to pester you. We just wanted to reach out one more time and see if maybe this was a good fit. It was from that perspective. And I thought that was really great. I'm glad they kept reaching out, because I did actually end up doing the podcast, promoting it, referring clients to them. And if they hadn't been persistent, they would have lost out on that opportunity just because I was busy. And so I think that's important to remember for all of us.
I totally agree. And I think that's where gentle marketing comes in. It's because it's all about how you do it, not, that you do it. Because I can remember, every day I get some kind of pitch for being on a podcast or getting a podcast guest pitch. And it's the way people do it that isn't okay. Like after the 3rd email, they're like, I think you're probably sitting under a rock and haven't read my emails, or, it's like, hello.
I've gotten some of those where they kind of go into a negative, like, confrontational
it's
approach.
like,
Yeah. That goes to knowing your audience.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to add on to, because we're kind of talking about JVs and affiliate marketing, I think what will change with the new paradigm that we kind of talked offline a little bit, what we're going through and where things are heading, is that it's not only money oriented. So that meaning that we're not just reaching out to people trying to get our stuff sold, but we're actually reaching out to them to collaborate and, have a bigger goal together. And again, that's where, gentle marketing comes in and the empath thing comes in. It's not just about getting, our stuff sold. It's about really making a difference and making an impact. Because when I think back to my affiliate marketing experiences, there's about 2 or 3 that went really sour. Like, it was just like not a good experience. And the reason why they didn't go well is because our values were not aligned. That was the first thing. So It was really just a money-based partnership. And when values are not aligned and the only thing in the game that the common goal is money, then it just doesn't feel good and it can't go well. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think that goes to being careful what you choose to promote. So when you're looking for things to offer as an affiliate, and I've done a lot of affiliate marketing over the years, one of the biggest things I'm looking at is this a product or service that I truly believe brings value to my community?
Right.
And so, if I'm looking at 2 things, one's a 90% commission, one's a 50% commission, but I believe the one with the 50% commission is the better product or service and is somebody I trust to take care of my people, I'm going to choose the one that is the better product or service, right? So it isn't all about the money piece of it. Of course, from the other side, we want to reward people when they share us and refer people to us. So that is an element of it. But it is important that we choose things that we're aligned with and that we really feel are valuable for our people, or we find people who really feel our thing is valuable, not just looking at the money perspective of it, but because long term, then we found something we can stay aligned with, we can continue promoting, and we can build a really valuable relationship over time. I mean, there's some products and services that I started out sharing as an affiliate 5 years ago that I'm still sharing today and that I've built recurring commissions from because I believe in the product, because I know it's a good product for my audience and it's a good company, right? And so I think that's important that we start with that filter of, does it align with what we want to share?
Yeah. Yeah. You're saying product, and I would add product and the product provider or service provider, right? It goes hand in hand. Yeah. Mars, what would you say you look out for in partners? So I mentioned values. The values of the person that I promote have to be aligned with mine.
Yeah, that's it.
What's something that you would say that you're looking at?
I wouldn't actually say anything different than that. I mean, honestly, as a person who, I was a creative director at major brand agencies for about 14 years. And we had a lot of success. We won a lot of awards. We did a lot of big campaigns, and people always asked me, like, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing it? And the single biggest thing that I was doing was bringing in creatives, because since it was a creative team, who were aligned from a value standpoint. The culture was built so that I knew that they would all kind of have a shorthand in the way that they talked, and that their goals, outcomes, and mission and agenda would be similar. And then outside the creative team, the people in the organization who drove the sales were called sales reps or account reps usually back then. And it used to be that the creatives, this is the one big thing that I did, and this is what I try and do even with affiliates, which is the creatives were like, oh God, these guys are like reptiles, they have no soul, because they'd go out and schmooze with people. These account reps would go out and schmooze with people and do lunch dates and dinner dates and stuff like that. And a lot of times they would promise things that the team could do that, well, we couldn't do and stuff like that. So one thing that I did that I think was the single biggest secret had everything to do with values, which is, first of all, I talked to the account reps and I was like, hey guys, Here, we actually are very value-centered, okay? And one of the things we don't do is promise things that we can't deliver, so you got to take that off your option list. And they were, a lot of times they'd humor me and say, yeah, sure, boss, whatever. But sometimes they got it. And at the same time, there's a certain type of creature that does that type of, like a certain type of human does that type of interaction versus the creatives who are sitting around doing creative stuff. But to the creative team, I flipped it on them and I said, like they got to do like drawings and writing and video and stuff and do the stuff that they love to do and get paid to do it. And frankly, it was the account reps who were driving their ability to do that. So I would take them aside and I'd say, I'd bring all the creatives into the room and I'd say, look, we are a values-centered team, right? But let me explain something to you about those reptilians, as you call them over there. They're the ones who are making it so that you can do what you love to do for a living, and they are part of the team. And moving forward, you will include them and you will show them how to, not necessarily go straight for the hype and that kind of thing, and get them to see why that's not good. Because putting them and isolating them over there in this other group and saying, well, they're this kind and we're this kind, that doesn't align with my values. Because I understand that, obviously revenue drives the bottom line of any business, and you can't stay in business if you're not making money. But how do you do it in a way where everybody who's involved is as value aligned as possible, as statistically possible, right? And how do you talk to people and find out where the similarities are versus where the differences are? So that, to me, it is all about values. And just to kind of drill down, that's sort of my modality all the time. It's like, I don't want the sort of empaths to forget that the non-empaths, if you will, do serve a function, and then figure out how to relate to them, talk to them, and interact with them, and see them as other human beings rather than sort of writing them off as this other group that must be eliminated. It's like you wouldn't be able to make a living doing this if we totally eliminated them. How do you connect with them, find the similarities, find where the values align, focus on that, and then sort of eliminate the values that are not driving the result, or not eliminate them, but don't focus on them would be the way I'd say it. But it is all about values, Sarah, to me.
Anything you want to add, Michelle?
No, I agree with that. I think it is in any partnership, you got to figure out where you line up, where you match up with somebody. What are the things you have in common? And that's common values, common goals. And as long as you can stay focused on that, you can make things work. But you have to know, where do you line up? What are the things that everybody agrees on are the goals? And if you can't agree on that, then it's probably not a good partnership.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's totally right.
I want to bring up something else that is transparency, because I heard you talk about it. I think it was on the first episode that you did on your podcast, and it kind of also probably fits into this topic of partnership. How would you address transparency? How far do you have to take transparency in a partnership, and does it depend maybe on what type of partnership?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when you're talking about transparency, sometimes we get caught up in what I think is just sort of a weird trend that seems to be going on out there, because nobody is ever 100% transparent, and we shouldn't be, right? There are some things that are just personal that we don't go into with the general public. But I think when transparency works, it's when whatever you are sharing, you're transparent about that. And when it comes to something like partnerships, the level of transparency is going to be different depending on how you're partnering with someone. If somebody's coming in as an affiliate to promote you, you're not going to share your entire tax return from the previous year with them. That's none of their business, right? But you should be transparent about, here's what the product or service is. Here's maybe what the conversion rate on my page is. Here are some things you need to know in the context of promoting this, right? If you're bringing somebody in to actually be business partners, where not only should they see your tax returns, but you're going to be filing somewhat joint tax returns in the sense of the business, then there's a whole different level of transparency that needs to come in there. And a lot of that is just doing your due diligence when you partner in any way with someone.
I'll be honest with you, Sarah. And so please take this with what it's intended with, which is the utmost in honesty based on my experience. A lot of times catchphrases kind of catch on that are, they're nice to say, but they're sort of disingenuous, because like transparency literally means you can completely see through something, right? There's nothing hidden, nothing veiled. And like Michelle said, there are degrees of transparency. It's opacity is what it really is. Mm-hmm. I prefer to focus on genuineness, being genuine, because I think what I've seen as a trend is, back in my creative director days when it was all high production commercials and high production sort of social proof and testimonials where you brought people into a studio and you shot them with good lights, etc. Those kind of things don't actually convert as well anymore. They don't connect with people as well as just somebody on like a Zoom video or in like on an iPhone or something. Like when you question them about your product or whatever, it seems much more genuine when it doesn't feel polished and it doesn't feel extra refined. It feels a little bit raw. And I think we have all, because of YouTube and because of all the different social media platforms, we've all kind of developed a sense of smell, about when something feels genuine versus not. So I think I hear a lot of my friends especially use the term transparency. Transparency is misleading. It's really level of opacity sort of, or level of transparency. But what it really is genuineness, meaning be as genuine as you can and as true to what you honestly believe in all of your dealings. And at the end of the day, you're going to do much better. And you can never be 100% transparent. And honestly, you can never be 100% genuine because sometimes we might even be misleading ourselves or misunderstanding something at that current moment. But I always circle back around when I realized that I did something wrong because I thought I misunderstood something 5 years ago or 2 years ago. I just go back around and I go, that thing that I used to like say or do, I realized that's not actually correct anymore, or even if it was last week. And then I'm being genuine at that moment in time, as genuine as I can be. But I think transparency sort of sets people up for failure because then they feel like they have to be 100% open about everything, which is an impossible. It's like perfection, Better to get it done and do your best at it than it is to try and be perfect, because then you end up paralyzed by the idea of perfection. And transparency sort of has the same effect in that you can't be 100% transparent. So,
well, I think the illustration that makes the most sense to me on this is, I was talking with one of my clients who coaches people on storytelling. And one of the things that she comes up to a lot is people are afraid when they hear us have discussions about transparency and authenticity and all of this, because they feel like they have to reveal everything. And the comparison she used that I thought was great was she said, even if you wanted to, nobody has time to hear your life story from birth to now. Nobody is expecting, nor do they want that kind of transparency from you. You have to choose the relevant stories to tell, but when you tell them, tell the truth. Yeah. When you tell the story, tell the honest, here's what happened from your perspective. Because, it's one of those things that from our perspective, things always look different than from someone else's. Right. And we have to be willing to kind of own our own truth and our own perspective and our own values and be willing to say, okay, here's this particular part of my life. Here's what happened. I'm being transparent about this. But don't feel like it means you have to tell your life story from birth to now in order to be transparent, because you don't. It really is about being genuine and being honest about the pieces that you do tell.
Yeah, you used the better word than I used, which is authenticity versus genuineness. I actually couldn't come up with the word. I just feel like transparency is a bit of a set you up to fail kind of a scenario.
Well, it feels hard because then you wonder, like, well, what parts do I be transparent about? And I think because honestly, we all have parts of our lives that were maybe challenging, that we don't necessarily talk about very much unless it's actually going to be of service to people. Because telling something just to tell it is selfish in a way. Right. Like I could sit here and tell you sob stories that would get everybody emotional, but if that's not going to our goal, then that's not something I should be transparent about right now, right? It's about choosing what's actually in service to our audience. And when it comes to partnerships specifically, where I start is, what do people need to know to say yes to this opportunity? Like, which pieces do I need to be transparent about and make sure that we're aligned with? And some of that does go to, like you and Mars were discussing, the values piece of it. It is about, hey, here's my goal for this campaign. Here's what I really want to create. And some of it is being transparent about numbers. Here's what we pay out when you promote this. Here's what you can expect in terms of the conversion rate. Here's what we're doing on our side of the campaign. We send this many emails. We do this webinar. We promote it this way. And so those are all things that we need to be transparent about so that affiliate relationships don't blow up. Because if we don't share that kind of stuff, you can't you can't set expectations properly when you aren't open about, hey, here's the campaign we're running. Here's our big goal.
Yeah. It's that Buddhist concept of expectations being the enemies of happiness. Always, like if you expected you were going to get $1 million and you only got $500,000 in some briefcase that somebody sent you, you'd be like, "Wah, I only got $500,000." Most people, and it's just because of the expectation itself. And so, setting expectations is, I think, one of the keys to success in any partnership, and also it is honestly the key to being authentic, which is just, here's what I believe will honestly happen as best as I understand, and here's what you can kind of expect from this outing.
Yeah. Well, and I'll throw one other thing in there. I will say this. I've had partnerships, and this has been 10, 15 years ago, that I walked into with a certain set of expectations. And the reason some of those did not go as smoothly as they could have was because I didn't express those expectations. I didn't anywhere put in writing, here's what I'm responsible for, here's what you're responsible for. Mm-hmm. And that's on me, right? If it didn't go as well as it could have, I should have been braver in that moment and said out loud and put in writing, here's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because that's a really, really important part of the process.
Yeah, both parties need to be responsible.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and you've got to outline that. And that's one thing I've coached a lot of my clients through recently who've brought in partners to work on projects together is, hey, the one smartest thing you can do is set clear expectations at the beginning of who's handling what the time expectation is, and what the results expectations are. Because otherwise you end up in a partnership where one person feels like from their perspective, they're doing all the work, or they're putting in the value and somebody else isn't delivering on their side. And you have to be willing to have that tough conversation up front. They say, fences make good neighbors. The same thing in partnerships. Having a clear written agreement makes for a good partnership because then the expectations are clear.
Yeah, I'm so glad we brought this up, and then it somehow went from transparency, authenticity. I throw in another term, which is vulnerability. They're all kind of the same. There's a certain level that you go in at, and the visual that comes up for me and that I use is the pool. There's a deep end and a shallow end. I said it first, so I didn't make it up. But you go in at the level, in accordance with your audience. So if you're, like you said, if you're talking to a joint venture partner, then you're not going to bring up all your stories with your husband and all of that.
Right.
Like, what? Why are you telling me all of that? So you have to choose the side of the pool that you go in at. And
I like that analogy.
And so it's the same thing with transparency and vulnerability, and never. And you mentioned that we're never just sharing with a goal. Like that's what we've seen a lot in marketing is like, okay, let me throw in some vulnerability so we can make more sales because that's what's selling right now, right? So definitely don't.
Yeah, it's become a buzzword, and I think when it gets applied as the buzzword, it doesn't work nearly as well as when it's coming from a place of, hey, I actually want to be genuine and authentic with people.
And you guys said it right. We've developed this smell, this sixth sense or whatever to really recognize whether it's genuine or not. So we really know, okay, he's just doing that because, it kind of.
Yeah, people have become cynical, I think is part of what's happened is we've been so over marketed to that we've become really cynical. We tend to doubt things. And it's why, like Mars was saying, that the testimonial that's just shot from your iPhone or from your living room comes across as so much more genuine than the polished one in the studio.
Yeah, because it's got all the ums and ahs in it, and it's got the faux pas and the screw ups and going off track and then coming back on, which feels a lot more genuine. Although those can be like sort of engineered too. I think the real key is the only things that we can't control other people's actions or even their feelings. We can't do it. And to even like over worry about that. And this is a path that I see a lot of empathic people go down is over worrying about how other people feel. The only thing that you should focus on is what you're doing and how you believe it's going to affect other people. Is it going to be positive for them or is it going to be negative? And sometimes the positive thing might be honestly telling somebody a hard truth, then that might hurt their feelings for a minute. But the reality is they might not grow if you don't do that. I mean, like with my kids, that was just they're both grown up now, but it's just a reality of raising them. It's like, okay, here's the consequence of this out in the real world if you go down this path. And they're like, but we want it to be this way. And I'm like, well, you can go that way, but like, here's how it's going to affect other people. And then this is what's going to come back to you karmically. So I think honestly, a big chunk of everything we do is got to be empaths shut themselves down, I find, like, or I use the word empath, but I mean, people who care, ethical entrepreneurs, a lot of times sort of, it almost becomes a negative, like a thing that stops us from progressing is over worrying about things we can't control. I can't control somebody else's feelings. What I can do is be conscious of how my behavior may be affecting their feelings and do something about that, because I can control how I talk and how I walk and how I act. So I just think that's another thing for people to really think about, so that they don't get blocked by sort of over focusing or fixating on something that they have no real control over. They should be aware of and act in love and integrity, but not over focus on that stuff, because you can't do anything about it.
Right. I want to bring this back and kind of start wrapping up to partnerships and collaboration. I have this feeling that with everything that's been going on in the world, and we talked about paradigm shifts several times, I have this feeling that we're moving more and more towards collaborations. What would you guys say about that?
So I would say I'll go first, and then you can chime in. I think what we're moving more towards is more visible collaborations,
right? Because
companies have always done collaborations. Because marketing hasn't been and companies haven't been so visible in the past. Like with the internet, you see and know everything these days, right?
And You're stealing what I was going to say. I just want you to know that. Now I have to come up with something new.
Well, but I do think that's what it is. I think what's shifted is actually the visibility of it. Yeah. And I think it's moved levels, because what used to happen was all the collaborations were kind of in these closed door boardrooms where big companies knew this was the way to grow. They knew partnerships were key to not just their survival, but to really achieving their goals for their businesses and for their companies. And it's something that now has become so much more transparent, because we see the big brand partnerships. We see the things that are happening between different companies. And now entrepreneurs are watching this and going, oh, that's an option for us. Yeah. And so there's this whole new wave of business owners who see the potential in it, because what's been going on behind closed doors is open now, not because it was necessarily hidden or secret before, but just because the internet didn't give us the level of insight into things that we have now. So I think what's really happening is the visibility is coming out there, that this is the fastest way to grow a business, is all these different levels and types of partnerships.
Sarah, is it possible for me to report my co-guest here as a concept thief? Because honestly, because I can, here's the thing that I love you, babe. But here's the thing that I can attest to firsthand, because a good chunk of the clients that we had back in my creative director days at the agency were Fortune 500 companies. Companies like Burger King and Gillette and Jaguar Motorcar US. It was people like that, and the big telecommunication companies and stuff. And yeah, there weren't cameras and microphones everywhere. Right. And so the technology is what has actually now made it seem like there's some difference in the way things are done. And it did, that sort of shroud did allow people to do shady things than they can do now, which I'm a big fan of the fact that the lack of opacity has sort of shined a light on things that were maybe going on. And this goes on a social level too. It's always been going on. Now there's a camera on it, right? Or 5 cameras on it. But what Michelle said is exactly what I observed in sitting in strategy meetings with CMOs, COOs, and CEOs of those big companies. The conversations and the way they would go, well, we could partner with this company, or we could do this over here, or we could make this move here, we could send this message out through our channels here. They were going on, and it isn't much different now. It's just much more accessible to people in like our Planet Business audience, or in your audiences, to them, right? We can show them, and this is what Michelle and I do, and it seems like what you do from interacting with you now, is basically curate what's just so transparent now, which is so out there. It's like, there's all these things that are just right out there in front of us, and some people might not know what to make of them or what they mean. And so all we do is really say, okay, this is what's going on, with this deal over here. This is what's going on with this methodology over here. We're just basically curating the sort of like much higher level of openness that's going on. So I'd like to report Michelle and just have that on her official permanent record.
No, well, I think one part of the revolution that is worth mentioning is technology has leveled the playing field, right? Because we have the internet and we have access now to so many potential collaborators and potential partners that whereas before it was something really only big business could do, now we can do it. And that's the part that's exciting to me is there's this whole wave of potential and possibility that entrepreneurs are able to jump in and choose to collaborate and choose to create partnerships that it wasn't possible 10 years ago or even 5 years ago the way it is today.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And I think it also shows that maybe we kind of got an overload of technology and we're like, okay, that's nice. All these bots and, stuff, like all this automation everywhere. But we actually want to collaborate with the humans behind the bots and behind the automation. So in a way, yes, I agree with you. It's probably, always been happening. But I also think there is a return to the more human collaborations that maybe there was like 5-10 years where all these entrepreneurs thought, oh, let me just figure everything out.
Automate everything.
Yeah, let me just automate everything and I can just create these giant mega businesses. And I didn't see that many partnerships actually among entrepreneurs because we had so much access to technology. And now the last 3 or 4 years, maybe there has been a return to the more human collaborations. And I love seeing it.
I don't know how you feel about it, Sarah, but my thoughts on it have been that the size of the village, because of the technology, the size of the village has just expanded. In other words, 500 or 1,000 years ago, because people lived in such close proximity, because they needed to for, sort of protection and for the convenience of, sharing food and so forth and livestock and shelter and so forth, that people collaborated a lot, 500, even 200 years, even 100 years ago, they collaborated a lot more. And then the automation temporarily put all the technology basically temporarily put a distance between us.
Right.
But now it's back to, instead of just like, 500 people being in the village, there's 5 million people being in a sort of metaphorical village where you can find people to collaborate with because you can sort through the people that who are value aligned with you thanks to the technology. Like I can go into a Facebook post. It doesn't really matter what it's about. It can be about something creative. It can be about something social. And I can pick out of the 40 people who've maybe commented on something. And I can go, okay, these 3 right here are people that I'd like to get to know better and maybe do some business with, because you can tell from the way they comment, what they like, what they dislike, what they say in their comments and the conversations they're having, like if you're kind of value aligned. I mean, i.e. you, it's pretty obvious to me from this interaction with you that we're able to do. I think you're probably, where are you, in Europe? Where are you at right now?
Yeah, I'm in Switzerland. Yeah,
there's no way we would have been able. This would have cost like $442,000 to have this conversation like 30 years ago. Yeah, it's just long distance. So now I get to talk to you, and Michelle said, "Hey, she's a great lady. Would you want to get on this with me? Because I think you would really like her." Anytime you were to say, "Hey, would you guys mind promoting this?" or "Hey, would you guys come on this?" or be part of this, I would say absolutely. And that we just wouldn't have been in the same sort of village 20 or 30 years ago, and now we get to be, which I think is a beautiful, exciting thing.
Exactly. So I think the change is the both and. Let's use technology, but let's have human interactions, right?
Yeah,
that's I think the answer to to the partnerships. Yeah. Wow, this has been great. I really enjoyed this conversation around. We talked much more than just partnership. We talk transparency and vulnerability and all kinds of stuff. That's what we do here. So thank you so much. I want to end it with my usual question here. What are you grateful for today?
I'll let you go first.
I'm grateful for fiance who always puts me on the spot, which keeps me on my toes. I'm grateful for, I actually, it's funny because my daughter, I'll keep this real short, but she messaged me the other day, and she didn't loop you in, Michelle, by the way. So my daughter, Ame, she messaged me and said, "Hey, I found this table that used to be my mom's. And her grandmother's actual table was in it got sold off as part of the estate. And she found this table that she used to color on, that she used to drink her juice boxes on. And she's like, oh my God, I found grandma's table at this like antique furniture place. And she was like, I want to get it. But Jeff, her boyfriend, doesn't really want to get it because it doesn't match their decorum and their design and stuff. And she goes, I'm so angry with him. And then he kind of yielded, and he was like, well, we could put it in the guest bedroom instead of in the living room. And she was still kind of angry. Like, I don't think you would have ever done that. And, if you were in his shoes, and I don't think, so-and-so and such would have done that. Other male sort of figures that she looks up to. And I'm like, Ame, he's at least willing to, see that you want it. It just doesn't match. How about the fact that he even went to the secondhand furniture store with you? How about the fact that he's a really decent guy who clearly loves you? And so basically, I just got her focused on what she was grateful for. And so I would have to say, like, learning the lesson of being grateful is the thing that I'm probably the most grateful for, because in terms of flipping my day around, when I'm like, this is bothering me and annoying me so much, I'm thinking like, well, at least I don't have bullets flying at my head. At least I'm not starving. At least I have food. I have basic basic protection. I have a good family. I have a great fiance. I have a really great thriving business. I get to meet people like you. So just the art of and the concept of being grateful is the thing that I'm probably the most grateful for, because it's the best thing in the world to like bring more abundance into my life, and more peace.
That's a great story. How can you top that, Michelle?
Yeah, I can't top that. So I guess I'll say ditto on that answer. I think that's the thing, is just really taking time to realize how much we have to be grateful for, whether it's in personal life or whether it's in business. The fact that we were born into this particular time in history where, we've got all sorts of chaos going on. The U.S. is making the news for all sorts of lovely things right now. But at the same time, we have technology. We have so much potential and so much possibility as to the amazing things that we can create, including partnerships, that I'm grateful for that.
I'm also grateful that we got to be on your show, Sarah. I think you're an amazing lady with what I believe to be one of the most important missions on earth right now, which is bringing people together and showing them how to be true to themselves while also being successful, so that they can, keep that going generation to generation to generation, because you can't do that. And if you can't sustain your family and don't have peace of mind to actually be able to share. So that's another thing I'm grateful for, is that we're on your podcast.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I'm grateful for having you both on the show, and that we figured out the little tech issues in the beginning, and where I recorded this awesome episode. So thank you so much for taking the time, and talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sarah.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, the very first show with more than one guest, a panel, so to speak. Let me know if you liked it, and don't forget to check out their free gift, theplanetbusiness.com/gift. I had a look and I really like the inspiration, so have a look at it. I think you'll appreciate also the way Michelle and Mars think outside of the box. So again, theplanetbusiness.com/gift, and you can also find all the links in the show notes at sarahsanacroce.com/GBR49. Next Friday, we'll conclude this season with another book update. And of course, also there's one more episode with Penny Pierce. That's on Wednesday. So don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, because those are not posted on my website. You'd have to be subscribed to get the notification. I hope you'll join me on this journey to a kinder marketing paradigm. Please invite your friends and share maybe this episode with them, or you can also send them to the Gentle Business Manifesto that they can download at thatgentlebusinessrevolution.com. Let's be the change we want to see in the world. Talk to you soon.